Australia's hot housing market has been on the agenda for some time. My next guest, Louis Christopher of SQM Research, is an expert in this field and is joining me on today's Sydney Direct to tell us more. Louis, thank you very much for welcoming us into your office this morning. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Okay, so firstly, September saw record housing auction volumes with 747 homes going under the hammer in just one weekend last month. Can you expand on this growth in auctions as a selling tool?
Yes, for starters, in springtime for Australia, you generally see more listings on the marketplace. It's what is known as the spring selling seasons. So it's no great surprise to see a surge in listings. What we have seen, though, with this recovery is a real surge in auction listings versus the rest of the market, which is generally sold via private treaty. So that is quite an abnormal movement and is definitely suggestive of a strong housing market recovery. Combined with the fact that the auction clearance rate itself, so those properties actually selling under the hammer, is very, very high. It's actually running in the high 70s, which is actually very abnormal for this time of year.
Now, interestingly, rental vacancies have actually taken a dip, a matter which you claim could be due to seasonality. Can you expand on this level of thinking for us?
Yes, so nationally in Australia, the rental vacancy rate is running at about 2.2% right now, and that was a slight dip from 2.3% from the month before. Overall, though, when we look at the trend over the course of the year, vacancies have actually been slightly rising. And we're expecting vacancies to actually rise again in 2015 as more housing is actually completed. With all the investor activity in the market right now, that's created a lot of building activity in the national market, and we're expecting a lot of that housing under construction right now to be completed next year, and that should see a lift in vacancies. So what we're seeing now with this dip, which was widely reported, was actually really just a seasonal thing that we actually generally see every September.
Now, you've previously commented that you see further upward price potential within Australia's housing market. Where currently for you, which city do you feel currently has more risk potential, Sydney or Melbourne, would you say?
Risk potential, very good question. Look, I think both of them have their own risks. Quite clearly, Sydney has risen substantially since the end of 2012. But when we consider the 10-year average, the rise is not that substantial in the scheme of things. It feels that way, no doubt about it. And most people would say, oh, yes, it's a massive rise and we're about to have a crash. But in the scheme of things, we're only playing catch up in this particular city. In Melbourne, on the other hand, I would actually argue the risks are a little bit higher. Number one, we're seeing more stock into the marketplace. Builders are actually being more active in Melbourne rather than Sydney right now. And Melbourne already had a large surge right throughout the last 10 years, except for two periods. And so on a price to incomes basis, Melbourne's actually looking more expensive than Sydney right now. Now, that's not to say that going forward, we're not going to see a correction at some point in time. As part of the normal cycle, we're going to see a downturn in both of these cities, and I suspect that's going to be when we see an interest rate rise. But when that actually happens, it looks like it's going to be some way off, given what the forward yield curve is looking like right now.
Now, as you well know, the RBA has expressed its concern over an investing-led housing boom. How hot is too hot, as it were, before the central bank would act to curb activity?
Well, about 12 months ago, we argued that, look, the RBA, or the Reserve Bank of Australia, would not lift interest rates just because of what's happening in Sydney. And it should be made very clear that what is happening in Sydney is not happening for the rest of the country. There are a number of capital cities which are recording just a modest capital gain. Some cities are actually still recording falls right now, such as Canberra and Darwin, and quite a number of cities are just running absolutely flat. So for the RBA to say, right, we're going to lift rates because of what's happening in Sydney would seem rather unfair for the other housing markets and for the greater economy, which, let's face it, is fairly soft right now.
Louis, thank you so much for your comments and insight this morning. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we have it. Do not judge a country on just one city. That's all we've got time for right now, but don't go away, as the Dukascopy TV team will bring you plenty more exclusive insights. From me though, it's goodbye for now.